Welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere, where CEOs, leaders, and experts at building teams,
companies,
organizations,
and amazing cultures share how to lead from anywhere in the world. I'm your co-host on the East Coast, Ginny Bianco Mathis.
And I'm your co-host on the West Coast, Mitch Simon. And we invite you to join us to Team Anywhere. When the pandemic started, our great leaders told their employees to run for their lives. As we move back to the office, our great leaders know that the way back is to walk. Rob LoCascio, CEO of LivePerson, the company he founded 25 years ago, shares with us that the greatest leaders today must provide certainty, clarity, and at the same time, authenticity. This is the time for leaders to recognize no one knows what the future holds. The best way forward is for leaders to share the truth about what they do know, not pretend they have figured out what they don't. Instead, leaders must listen to their employees to find out what their employees need to team anywhere. Hello and welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere. I'm your co-host, Mitch Simon, on the West Coast, and I've got my amazing co-host on the East Coast, Ginny Bianca Mathis.
You got it.
I got his name right. And of course, in the studio today on the podcast, we have Rob LoCascio, who founded LivePerson and has been its chief executive officer since its inception in 1995, making him one of the longest running tech CEOs in the world, and also proving that most of our listeners were not even born when you started this company. So Rob, how are you?
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, great. We always like to start, with the question, what have you learned over the last year and what has most surprised you?
It's a good question. I mean, the last year was, for us as a company, we did just amazing things. The company, had one of our best years in the history because we're in digital and we're transforming customer care into digital from phone calls and everything. But I think what's interesting right now, so I'll give you two perspectives. At the beginning of the COVID, it was about run for your life. And we early on said everyone doesn't have to go to work. And we never tried to give hope. I wanted to give certainty. So we told our employees, we're not going back to the offices this year, probably not next year. Because I was reading what the experts saying, go do whatever you want to do, just be safe. Which actually seemed hard, but it turns out it was kind of easy because when you run for your life, people just run.
Yeah.
Now it's about getting back or going forward. And it's a very different thing that people are dealing with, which is how do we want to work now going forward? And that's a much windier road than I think run for your life.
Yeah, I totally get that because that is in fact the new, our new current situation is we now are going back, but we don't really know what that means. And not anyone has actually pierced that out except to say, you're going back.
Right. And whatever back means. And then what happened, you're seeing is employees are like, no, I'm going to go back 3 days a week.
You're right.
Not Mondays and Fridays. And you saw a bunch of employees wrote a letter to Tim Cook and all that. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a walk versus a run. And, if you heard my earlier a year and a half ago, so you would hear me say, we're never going back to offices. And so our employees want to go back to connect. I just had an offsite with my leadership team. This is the first time in 2 years in Miami. Wow. And, I want to be with everyone. And we spent 3 days together, had dinners together, hung out, talked about the business, and it's invaluable. And unfortunately, 18 of us were together, and then there was another 10 people on video. And it was really hard for the 10 people on video. They were even talking about I had 3 cameras set up, a camera behind and 2 cameras in the front, and we were all grouped. So but it's just you can't judge. You can't get the vibe in the room. You lose the vibe in the room through video.
So what's your message then? I love your metaphors of the run and the walk. What's your message? We're going to get into what does live person do, by the way. What's your message on how would you teach leaders how to walk right now? That's my question. How do you teach leaders how to walk right now?
It's a good question. Again, it's like when we started. This one's going to be a little trickier because when COVID started, I've been through the .com. I went through 9/11 in New York City, and then I went through the financial crisis. So as a leader, especially 9/11 and the .com, it had a very deep set of learnings for me. And financial crisis was a little bit like that, but I learned most of my macro impact stuff from that. And what I found was you got to lead with empathy. You have to basically listen and not try to lead like you're I always feel like if I have this image in my head of like King Arthur days or something where I'm leading it, charging the battle. And the image is always just like a leader charging and commanding.
Mm-hmm.
And what they forget is there was a whole talk of people around the campfire about what we're doing. Like good leaders know, like get people around the campfire, listen to them, and then we'll take them to battle. So sometimes we forget that. So empathy is about being around the campfire, listen to them because you're about to go through a battle, and you have to be close to them and understand what are their needs, what are they fearful of. Now you fear for your lives. It's a whole other thing when you're fearing for your life. So here we are now we're not on the other side of this, but we're on some side of it, better than a year and a half ago. And when you listen to the employees, it's a very mixed bag. Some people, our young people want to get together. They want to get in offices and start working as part of their social life. Some people who are married and have kids and maybe don't live in the city, they don't want to commute. So there's this but they want to get together once in a while. So I don't have an easy answer. I know what my gut tells me. My gut says that we need to get people back together. I don't like the feeling that I can't see my people. Also, I've had some people that have had health issues and I can't see it. Like I'm seeing some people that who I'm watching on video and they seem awesome, but they're having issues and I don't see it because normally I'm in an office and I can feel it and I look at them and I'm like, something's wrong. I'll take them to lunch and what's going on. And so I'm very concerned about feeling the business as a leader. I'm like, part of my job is to feel the business. And I think we need to be in offices to have a feeling of the business and a feeling for people.
If we can't necessarily have them in the office, what are some things that you've done to use that spiny sense to kind of judge that things aren't right, or how do you even go about to figure out that something might not be right?
I mean, I kind of got like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, we're getting together.
Okay.
We're just getting together. Like we have some big decisions we need to make. There's some important things going in the company. It's a very exciting time. We want to deploy capital. We need to hire people, but we need to get together to talk through this stuff and get aligned. And I think you just got to make the time, as in get them together for 2 days, 3 days if you're not getting them in offices. But I just think that this keeping people in the world's largest video game is not awesome.
That's a nice analogy. All right, let me play devil's advocate.
All right, Jenny.
I do agree with you. There's incredible gain face-to-face. And I have also seen many leaders do some amazing things online in learning, which was a huge curve, learning how to use a Zoom and still see that someone's not dealing well, learning how to use platforms where they can share, well, here's where I think we need to go on strategy. And to the point, seeing it being even better than sitting around the campfire because I can bring people in that normally they can see me, I can see them, they can't hide. All right, that's one thing. So, how do you, because as you said, there's some people, given the different ages, different life, are looking for some different things. How about a hybrid? let's say the person says, I want to come in 3 days a week. So you have meetings on those days.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that viable to you?
Yeah. I think that's the way it'll shake out, is that it's going to be a walk, as in we're thinking about getting, like New York, we have 200 people in the metro area. Now we don't, because people moved, but we're going to get an office there start with 40 people, as in a capacity of 40, because people will come in and have meetings. They want to have more meeting space now than just sitting space.
Yes.
It's very hard for engineers. Half our company, out of our 1,400 employees, are engineers. It's very hard for engineers to go back and forth between an office and home, because they have usually two screens. And like, they don't, unless the two screens are somewhere. The idea of going into a WeWork and you're bringing your two screens, this is what we heard, because we've been testing and learning on WeWork space in certain areas, and they're like, I can't bring my screens, and they're not working on laptops. They're working, they're engineers.
That's a great example.
They're coding and they're doing, yeah. So I think there's some logistics there that has to be worked out, but we'll work it out. That's why I said you got to walk. You have to walk back in. Look, I think that the problem, I'm not coming from the Jamie Dimon school of thinking, which is like, I think his thinking is like everyone's lazy and they're going to be home on Fridays and Mondays not working. And I think that's a distrust from his mentality. I'm not saying that's what he 100%, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but it seems like that's where it's coming from. Like, we need people in the office because but I don't know. It's going to be, look, the good thing is we hire people now anywhere in the world, where in the past we were more office centric. We now have the ability to hire people anywhere, which is awesome. So,
I'm picking up, Rob, is you're in the customer service business. That's the product, right? The product is customer service. It sounds like you actually listen. This is freaky, but you actually listen to your customers.
Yeah. That's exactly right. So, I mean, it's, once again, I go back to the empathy thing. I guess sometimes we think of empathy in difficult situations. There's empathy in many situations. What is it? What is that about? It's just trying to truly understand, what are people looking for? What are they fearful of? Because the same thing, like, people may have fear of coming back in the office for some other reason. I don't want to sit and commute. I don't want to waste time. I like that I can be closer to my family. There was something there. So it's a little bit more of a Rubik's Cube going back, because there's many sides to many different people. Like, each one of those dots represents a human.
Yes.
And they're all very different. Ultimately, though, we have to do what's best for the company. This is true. Yeah. So ultimately, as a company, we have to be together. We've got to hit our goals. We have to try to work the best we can. And I don't think any of us has really figured it out yet, the distributed workforce and how it really works. So
I do hear, though, that if we were going to call this if Rob he coins this term, the walk phase, I really hear that the walk phase that you're coming up with is let's just go listen to what our employees are thinking. It reminds me, Rob, of the book, the first 90 days. So you're a brand new CEO. You've walked into a brand new company, which is kind of what we're all doing today.
Yeah.
And what's the first thing you do for the first 90 days? You don't change anything. You just walk around and you listen. And I also, when I was also experiencing, I don't know if you are, Rob, as well, is, if you would ask your employees we're in the middle of June. If you'd ask them at the end of April, do you want to come back? Versus now in June, when the state of California, we're going to be completely open, and Massachusetts, I know, is completely open. I think your answers of when you want to come back, do you want to come back? I think they're going to change pretty rapidly, but quickly, which is the same thing, rapidly and quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know, what are you experiencing? Because you're on the East Coast, and you did have a large New York presence.
Yeah. So first of all, just not to break the bad news, but like we've been working on at-home COVID testing. We built technology for employees to take at-home testing, like rapid testing. And we work with Citibank, actually, with their employees. And we've been working with the main scientists in COVID, like Dr. Michael Mina, like the main people are on TV, like we work with them because that's how we developed our protocols and stuff. We're going to be spiking in Q4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we will. This is if you look at like Dr. Michael Mina from Harvard, he plotted the whole thing, and he continues to plot. This is a summertime down type virus like the flu, and then it will, and then we will have very big spikes. Not as many people dying, but we're going to have big spikes of COVID come September, starting in September, and it's going to go right all the way into February. And so, first, not pushing the stuff we're working on, testing. Like we're gonna like it was this whole thing about our offsite. People need to test. People want to come back. They're vaccinated. They're not vaccinated. I'm talking like the basic thing here.
Yeah.
So we need to test. If you want to, people won't feel comfortable getting together if they think I could get infected, if I
Yeah.
could get a variant, if how do I know that this person had the vaccine or not? Let's start. Also, vaccines wear off. If you're older, like me, you can wear off quicker. I'm 53, so they wear off. Younger, not as much. So we don't know. And then you saw the CDC guidelines came out like last week. It was ridiculous that they said like they don't want people to really testing to see how they're if they still have antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like almost they don't want people to know if they can catch it or not. I mean, it's the government hasn't been helpful. So what I'm trying to say is like everything looks like it's trending. So it looks like put people back in offices. What if COVID comes back?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do? We're going to be back to again where we are. So first, I think we need to make a safe environment for our employees, which includes testing. This is what we're doing. Citibank has been their chief medical officer has been very visionary, very forward thinking, and has brought the business back. Everyone needs to think like that. The second thing is how do you walk your way into like this, part-time, they come 3 days a
Yeah.
week, they have meetings there. And then I think you got to be really diligent on scheduling stuff. Because like if it's just haphazard, like show up, maybe you're gonna have problems. So I
Yeah.
think make meetings. Like I made a meeting in Miami. Make a meeting. Part of the leaders all know this. Like our job is to gather people.
Mm-hmm.
We have the power of gathering. So gather them, and as quick as you can. And I would gather quickly
Yeah.
before COVID hit spikes in December.
Right.
So gather them
Right.
now during the summertime.
I love that leaders have the power of gathering, and I'm going to push on the notion and do it the best you can, whether that's going to be in person or whether that's going to be virtually. Because to your point, if we do have this spike, we're going to be moving back to more hybrid, and we need to be flexible and realize there's choices on the one hand, and yet realities on the other. As you point, at the end, we have to do what's best for the business. So there has to be compromises on, a certain amount. Yeah, I know you want 3 days a week, but you're only going to get 2. Something that is, how are we going to make this work for everybody? And you brought it back to empathy, and it goes back to the listening. Yeah, that Mitch was saying.
Yeah.
We don't know. Right.
So I'm just wondering, getting back, if you were to describe the type of leadership that's needed today, especially in terms of, let's say, listening, being empathetic, planning, but knowing that all our plans are going to get screwed up because of this COVID second or third version. What would you what kind of knowledge would you be imparting on leaders these days as to how they need to be and what they should expect?
Clarity. Like you got to be clear. Like it's hard to be. This is the one thing I found. It's hard to be very clear in macro events. But your job is to cut through the noise because there's like so much noise. By the way, as we know, the macro event of COVID then ushered in another event, which is a focus on inequality.
Yeah.
Like a focus on inequality more than I've seen in my lifetime. And it was always there, but this brought it out even more. So you had that part. So how do you give people clarity through that, all of that? And so I think that's the role. Certainty and clarity is what people need to see. Like during the COVID, I sat in this chair here This looks like I got this
Oh, wow.
chair in
We're
the
looking
hand.
at a chair which looks like a throne.
Yes. Well, it's from King Arthur.
No, I got this chair in Sicily in a
Of
antique
course.
store, and I shipped it back, and it used to belong to some palace, whatever. And it's not a throne, but it's funny. I would sit in there, and I didn't even notice because it was my normal chair. I haven't because that was the chair that was in this office versus I have in like a normal chair. So I would sit in there and do the meetings. People are like, "Oh my God, you're sitting in this chair," and somehow they get a sense of like a heavy, big chair. Like there's a sense of certainty with it. That they
Wow.
hear.
Smart.
Like you looked, and I wasn't doing it on purpose. Trust me,
Yeah.
that was my only chair. They said, "Oh, you look so calm." And the way you're talking is like you're not freaked out. And we're
Yeah.
freaked out. Some of us are freaked out, and you're sitting in that chair, like you're just sitting there doing your work. And I'm kind of like, that's what people want to see.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see
Wow.
they want to see the visual cues,
Mm-hmm.
and then they want to hear that you're not panicked. And we had an employee die on us in April, and from COVID. He was 23 years old,
God.
and out of nowhere, within a week, he got it, and then went to the hospital, died 3 days later, and didn't seem to have any complications that we can tell. He's just 23 years old, data scientist out of Seattle, and I had to call his mother and father because they were in China.
Oh.
He had no family here, so there I am. I'm with a group of employees because his team leader, and then there's the unit leader want to talk to the family too, and we had a translator. And so, even through that, I didn't expect on that day when I woke up in the morning when we talking to some mom, which is, when you talk to a mom and you tell her her son's dead, and he's 20, and it was her only son, I did it's a awful feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, okay, I want to be respectful to the family. I want to do everything I can to give them certainty that we're going to take care of their son's remains, and he had stuff to clean up financially, and make sure we can take care of them, give them certainty that he's not going to be dumped on the side of the road in some morgue and forgotten. He's part of our family, and we're his family here. So that's one level. Then the other thing is to the people who he worked with. They're young people who are now faced with mortality,
Yeah.
in their 20s. So how do you give them certainty? It's like, then we have a company as a whole, and everyone, then we announced that he passed away, and we did a ceremony for him and his family, to respect them, and everyone came in, and we paid some nice words. But so I didn't expect it, but once again, even in that situation, it's like, how do we give certainty all the way down the chain so that everyone goes, okay, it's going to be okay. We're in this together. Like, all we have is each other right now in this moment. And they need to know that the company is not going to just forget them. That if something goes wrong, we're here to be with you. So I go back to, I'm giving him an extreme example that happened to me during COVID. Then there's this, I'm running the business and we need to make our revenue targets and do all that. But, people need to know certainty. Now, with that, unfortunately, and fortunately, is change.
Yep.
We're in a company that changes every day. We're a new company, and people get thrilled by change. We're not here to give them certainty about it. We're here to go after big ideas. So it's a balance between, we're certain we're going after what we're doing, but what we're going after what we're doing is going to be a windy road, and sit back and enjoy it.
And we're also walking. That's not certainty either, right?
And
we're walking because we're not so that the balance. Can you define the balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think
we just threw it on the table there. It's the secret sauce.
but so I think the secret sauce is pretty straightforward. People need to do the work. Like, the only thing that frees us is work. Work is my grandfather said to me, or my dad said, the idle mind is the playground for the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people, if you're sitting there and you're thinking about anything but so work frees us. Work allows us to, by the way, it's not just, I'm talking about work here. It could be work on your health. Like, people become more aware of their health. I've been more into my health. I want to own my health more than I did ever before. So the work allows us to continue forward and not have an idle brain. And idle minds are the playground for the devil. Like, bad things happen with idle minds. People start to freak out. They get nervous. they start to think about stuff because the brain, the reptile brain does that.
Yeah.
The reptile brain just makes us fear for our lives. So
I guess as the as a leader, one of the greatest things you can do is provide certainty about what you're doing, what your company's up to, give people clarity on what they need to do to serve the company, and you're doing about the best thing that you can for people, because there is so much uncertainty. So we're not going to focus on what's not certain. We're going to focus on really what we're all about as a company, and
The values.
the values, and
I
then
mean, Rob,
and then
you demonstrated the value of who and
yeah.
what you are.
Well, that was a story that goes in a book.
Mm-hmm.
If you're writing,
and the other thing is that I think as leaders we gotta give ourselves a break. What I like, we can be very hard on ourselves, and it's hard to do. Like I'm hard on myself a lot, where I'm saying like because we're living with things we don't control. We're the reality is we're sitting on planet Earth, which is in the middle of God knows where. We have no idea, floating around in something called a galaxy, and when you really pull back, you're like, and we're all okay with that, floating on something that's floating, by the way. Like
yeah,
we don't
we're
live.
okay.
How many things in life do you float on? Like if you're ever on a float, you get off the float pretty quick. Like it's fun for about 5 minutes on water. If you're ever on an object on water where you're floating, you're like, this is really cool, but you're not like, hey, I'm sleeping on the floaty thing. I mean, you may sleep on a boat. I personally, unless it's a giant boat, I get nauseous. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like even in a giant boat, you can get a little nauseous. But like no thing, like this is good for a couple of days, but some people love 365 days on boats. I get it. I'm using it as a little bit of a metaphor, but I'm just saying as an example. Floating on in space, we're okay with. Somehow in our minds we're okay. And I'm saying it's the same thing like for a leader, we have to give ourselves a break that there's a lot of uncertainty that we don't control all that much,
Right.
that we tend to get really pissed off when we feel like the control we have seems to be taken away from us. And in a pandemic, a lot of controls. Like right now, I could be pretty angry about the fact that I don't feel very in control about the path forward, about this idea of where are we going to all work.
Mm-hmm.
And some days I'm getting a little bit pissed off about it. I'm like, but then I realize like we're doing our best. I'm doing my best. I'm just doing what. And by the way, my competitors are doing the same thing I'm doing.
Right.
Like every company's dealing with the same stuff, and no one has an edge right now, And so, like, I think the best thing we can do is try to just give ourselves a little bit of a break, and just realize we have a lot of things we're not in control of, like the basics of floating. So,
Well, telling the truth, being authentic, and you come off, by the way, as very authentic. That is what the people want to see. And that gives them a sense of peace to navigate all that floating in a way, because we know that someone that Mitch and I both know wrote an article recently on the psychology of having choices, and how, on the one hand, we need choices. That gives us a sense of ownership, a stake. I'm going to be a part of this. Yet you give us too many choices, and we get confused.
correct.
So that balance is what organizations are trying to deal with.
But I think truth. I'll go back. I have a really good story on truth, like where I learned about this concept of truth. So, truth in business, which is different than truth in like when your parents tell you like always be truthful, right?
Yeah.
And then when you're in business has a lot of gray areas to it. As
Right.
in, I'm not talking about the moral gray area. I'm talking like there's black and white in stealing, cheating, and lying. I'm not talking about that. That's like, but I'm talking about truth. So when I was 33 years old, 34 years old, I went public at 33, and I was young. And then a year later, we're faced with laying off large chunks of our company. So myself and my CFO went to the board in February of 2001 and said, we're going to fire 140 out of 180 people.
Wow.
Think of that, 140 to 180.
Yeah.
Down to 40 people from 180. So I remember we gave the plan, and they were shocked, by the way. The board was like, I don't, but it's a long story. I had a fear of losing the company because I lost my first company, and that fear stayed with me, and I wasn't going to lose my
Mhm.
second company. So I knew I needed to make drastic decisions. So Bob Matchelot, who was on my board, and Bob, he was on the board at Disney for many years. Bob was like a vice chairman of Seagram's and Morgan Stanley, like an amazing guy. And he was in a venture fund that put money in my company, and he joined the board. So Bob's like at the retirement age of his career at that time, and now he's got a lot of wisdom. And Bob pulls me aside after the board meeting and says, I want to give you a piece of advice. He goes, first of all, your plan that you laid out is pretty aggressive, and I don't know if you're going to make it.
Mm.
Like, I don't know how you could take a company from 180 to 40. I don't know how that works, firing like 70% of your employee base and you stay alive. Those people did work. So how does that get all done? But you've explained you don't know either. I'm okay with that. So the second thing is you're very young and you have a whole career ahead of you. And once again, this may not work out, but I'm going to give you one piece of advice. Tell the truth.
Wow.
Your natural inclination is to tell everybody that it's going to be okay, and it's not. And you're going to fire people. I never fired anyone up to that point. Your first firing is with a mass group of people, and you want to bullshit them, and you want to tell the remaining people it's all okay, and you're going to want to bullshit. You're going to want to bullshit your investors on quarterly calls now. You're going to want to tell, and he says if you do that, he says if you tell the truth, whether this works out or not for you, they will respect you and remember you, and you're going to have a future in business. Don't ruin it with this moment in time.
Yeah.
So I remember when we did the layoffs, we brought everyone into a room, we handed them all an envelope. One said, come back for lunch, and one didn't say anything. And if you had the not anything, it meant you had to leave in 15 minutes. We had guards at the door and everything because back then it was like there was a lot of bad things happening. We weren't the only one. There were layoffs all over the place.
Yes. Yes.
People came back from lunch and they were shocked. And it was emotionally, I cried because I had to lay off some people myself who I founded the company with, or, I hired my first employees, and I was, not happy. I was sad. And the first question was, are we going to have our jobs?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if you need to make a decision based on that, then please make that decision. I will say this, I think we've done what we need to do to get us forward. And if you give it your all, I think we got a shot at making it. But make a decision. When 9/11 happened, we watched the towers come down. Same thing. Employees came and I said, if you don't want to be here, don't be here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to play the rah-rah with you. I don't want to be responsible for your life. So it's hard to do that on investor calls. I got on the calls with shareholders, terrible calls with our shareholders. All I'm saying is the truth does help. And if it turns out it doesn't feel good, at least they know you told the truth.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I think this is first of all, it's an incredible story. Thank you for that story.
Totally.
And I think it's really a great way to close out this interview, which is, this new time, we're going to walk because we were certain on the run part. We're absolutely certain. We got to go. You got to get out of here and take care of yourself. But on this walk, we don't know. I don't know. And let's just be frank and honest. And I think that's the best way to get employees to follow you and to get employees to be open and vulnerable and to respect their leaders and respect the company.
Yes. I love how here we are, this worldwide influence and pandemic. And given your stories and everything you've experienced, it comes down to in the office, out of the office, whatever, the trust, the empathy, and the truthfulness.
I love it.
And we've always said that.
Yeah.
That's
Anywhere,
it. Trust,
from
empathy,
anywhere.
and truth. And I just think you're right on. These are the things that'll get you through it, and forgiveness.
That's
Because people, it's, we all make mistakes. Like, I think the hardest thing is to say, I'm sorry. Like, the one thing I've learned over the years is that, I have the power to say I'm sorry. So I also have the power to make bad mistakes and say bad things. I'm not super
Yes.
bad things,
Yes,
but there's
exactly.
some things where you get angry at people or you do
Yeah.
something, but you can pick up the phone the next day and say I'm sorry, and it gives you the freedom to 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 move forward, because the worst you can do is say I'm sorry, and that is good enough on most days.
Mm,
I mean, you don't throw it around. I mean, you don't throw it around like cheap.
yeah.
But I'm saying, like, if you use it correctly, then as a leader, even if you don't do it right, you have the power of apologizing. You have the
Yeah.
power of apologizing, and that's something it's hard. Like, even my kids, I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 4-month-year-old. Like,
Wow.
sometimes my kids, the hardest things for them now, they're getting used to it, is saying I can't. You say you're sorry to your brother. My sometimes my
Right,
daughter,
right.
Right.
she just sits there. And you're just like, just say the words, even if you don't mean it. You don't say that.
Yeah,
No, yeah,
I know.
right.
Yeah, I know.
You never.
We do.
You're like,
We
just
do.
right. Just say it. Just say I'm sorry, and literally they will walk away.
Yeah.
Sometimes they will walk away and be punished for not
Yeah.
just saying 2 words.
It's the
But think,
struggle with the ego. They're going through that developmental stage.
Wow.
Right.
but those
Okay.
You're
Well,
words have
asking.
power. They have
Yeah.
power. Those words. Those 2 words
they do.
obviously have power, because a child who doesn't even know what they're about knows deep down these. I don't want to say what this is.
So funny. So funny. All right. Well, I'm sorry because we're coming to an end
Oh,
right
I
Okay, great.
now.
know.
Rob, how can people contact you, find you if they want to learn more about you or learn more about Live Person?
Yeah, so if you go to, I put this podcast out called Over the Wall, and I've been
Okay.
interviewing people um, from Ed Norton, the actor, to astronauts, to all sorts of people that are really Deepak Chopra, and all people that I think really have interesting things about being an entrepreneur and
Yeah.
and working through the mental game. And so you can check it out at Over the Wall. It's on all the podcast platforms. You
Right.
can see me on social. If you want to, you can email me at rob@liveperson.com. If you really have a question for me or something, I'm always here to help. People help to me all the time. So however you want to get to me, you can get to me.
Great. Wow. Well, thank you, Rob. This is just such a great
This has
interview.
been fabulous. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Great stories, great vulnerability, great energy. And so, to our great listeners, if you've loved this episode, which we have, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. And I want to thank you, Rob. I want to thank you, Ginny, and thank all of our
Ginny.
listeners. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Team Anywhere.